It was a normal morning at the morgue, and Lucas, a 32-year-old medical examiner, was ready for another day of work. He straightened his white coat and took a sip of coffee, the strong aroma helping him wake up. As he organized some papers on his desk, the door creaked open. A nurse entered, wearing a serious expression. "Dr. Lucas, we have an urgent case," the nurse said, his voice tense. "A body just arrived. The circumstances are strange." Lucas's curiosity was piqued. He followed the nurse to the room where the body was. Upon entering, he found a stretcher covered by a white sheet. The room was full of equipment and vials, but the atmosphere was filled with a palpable mystery. "Who was the victim?" Lucas asked, pulling the sheet away. The nurse hesitated before answering. "A young woman, looks about 25 years old. We don't have many details yet. The police haven't been able to explain how this happened." With a careful movement, Lucas revealed the young woman's face. His heart raced. Her beauty was undeniable, and he was immediately drawn to the serene expression that still lingered on her face. But the situation was grim. How could someone so young be lying there, lifeless? As he examined the body, Lucas noticed strange marks on her arms, something that did not appear to be the result of an accident. Thoughts began to swirl in his head. The first autopsy of the day was turning into a mystery he could not ignore. What had happened to her? He needed answers. Lucas's mind was racing, and one question haunted him. Who was Sophia, and what was the truth behind her death? Determined to find out, he prepared to begin the autopsy, knowing that this would be a journey that would take him far beyond his office. Lucas focused on the task at hand. The room was silent except for the sound of his stethoscope, which he adjusted before beginning the autopsy. Carefully, he made the first cut into Sophia's skin, revealing a layer of tissue that told stories of pain and perhaps struggle. With each layer he peeled back, the tension grew. He felt that each movement brought him closer to the truth. As he examined the body, Lucas came across more strange marks, like scars in the shape of outlines that seemed to be from something that could not be easily explained. This was unusual in cases of accidental deaths. The doctor began to analyze the possible cause of death, but his mind wandered. He wondered how the life of such a young woman could end in such tragedy. As he worked, Lucas decided that he needed to know more about Sophia. He searched the record for her name, but surprisingly, he found nothing. This only heightened his interest and at the same time his frustration. How could someone disappear without a trace? Her story was beginning to intertwine with his own. After completing the autopsy, Lucas decided that he needed more details. He remembered that his friend Julio, the police officer, might have access to information that he didn't. So he picked up his phone and called Julio. "Julio, it's Lucas. I just received the body of a young woman named Sophia. Do you know anything about her?" he asked in a serious tone. "Not much, just that she was found unconscious in an alley." "I'll see what I can find out," Julio replied, making Lucas a little more hopeful. As he waited, Lucas couldn't get the image of Sophia out of his head. She seemed so alive, so full of stories that would never be told. He felt increasingly involved in the mystery surrounding her and his determination to find out the truth. And so, with his mind racing and his heart racing, he anxiously awaited Julio's call, feeling that he was about to embark on an investigation that would change his life forever. As Lucas waited for news from Julio, his mind began to wander to his own past. He didn't have a common story like most people. From a young age, his parents dreamed of him following in their family's footsteps into music. They were talented and dedicated musicians, and he was taught to play the violin at an early age. But inside, Lucas felt stifled. He remembered the long hours of rehearsals and rigorous lessons that he always felt were not for him. When most children were playing, he was practicing scales and dreaming of performing on the big stage. even though in his heart there was a longing for something completely different. What he really loved were the mystery stories and detective films that he would watch in secret, fascinated by the twists and turns and solving puzzles. The turning point in his life came during a family event. He was about to play in an important performance when he overheard a conversation between his parents. They were talking about a tragic accident that had occurred with a family friend, which had become an autopsy case. Lucas, curious, listened to every word, and a new world opened up before him. At that moment, he realized that his true passion was to understand the causes of death and help people find answers to their questions. The pressure increased when, in a fit of frustration, Lucas decided that he no longer wanted to play the violin. He remembered the day he threw the instrument across the room, screaming that he hated music. That was his truth, a truth that had left his family in shock. They had expected an artist, but he wanted to be a forensic doctor. Over time, Lucas graduated in medicine and specialized in pathology. Each body he examined was a new opportunity to discover stories that could not be told, and he felt fulfilled. But even with this fulfillment, the weight of family expectations still followed him. Now, with Sophia in front of him, he felt that the past could come back to haunt him. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Julio. "Lucas, I found out a few things about Sophia. Let's meet up to talk," Julio said. Lucas felt butterflies in his stomach. The answers he had been waiting for were coming, and with them, the promise of a new mystery to be unraveled. He prepared to leave, determined to find out everything about the young woman who was now occupying his thoughts. After hanging up the phone, Lucas felt a wave of adrenaline running through his body. He knew that finding Julio could be the key to understanding what had really happened to Sophia. With renewed determination, he headed to Julio's office, where the police officer was waiting. "Thank you for coming so quickly," Julio said as soon as Lucas entered. The office was full of papers and photos, and Lucas could tell that Sophia's case was being treated seriously. "What did you find out?" Lucas asked, sitting down at the table. "Look, the situation is complicated. The only information we've been able to find is that she was involved with a group of young people who have a history of problematic behavior. It seems there was a party at an apartment near where she was found," Julio explained, showing some photos from the crime scene. As Julio spoke, Lucas remembered what he had found during the autopsy. The marks on Sophia's arms, which were not just ordinary cuts or scratches, but something deeper and more disturbing. The uneasiness grew inside him. It was hard to believe that a young woman so full of life could be associated with such a dark world. "We need to know more about this group," Lucas said determinedly. "If she was in danger, we must find out who these individuals are." Julio nodded in agreement. "I'm already investigating, but any information you can get from the autopsy can help us put together a profile of her." "What did you think?" Lucas remembered the sensation of touching Sophia's skin. The moment she had started to writhe on the autopsy table was still fresh in his mind. He realized there was something more. Well, before she passed out, she was reacting strangely. "As soon as I made a small cut, her body reacted. I believe she was still alive, but in a very weakened state." Julio was silent for a moment, processing the information. "This changes everything. If Sophia was alive, we need to understand what happened to her before we got to that scene." With a new perspective, Lucas felt that every detail counted. They were facing a complex and challenging case, and Sophia's life could depend on their discoveries. Determined, he and Julio decided to delve deeper into her life, ready to unravel the mystery surrounding her death. It was a race against time, and Lucas was more involved than ever. With the heat of determination still pulsing inside him, Lucas and Julio left the office, heading to the hospital where Sophia was admitted. The doctor couldn't shake the feeling that the answers they were looking for were about to be revealed. The idea that she had writhed during the autopsy made him uneasy, but also curious. What could have caused this reaction? When they arrived at the hospital, they were led to the room where Sophia was recovering. The room was quiet, with the characteristic smell of antiseptics and medicine. Lucas felt butterflies in his stomach as he entered the room. Sophia was lying on the bed, a look of confusion on her face. When their eyes met, Lucas noticed that there was a mixture of relief and fear in her eyes. "Hi, Sophia. I'm Dr. Lucas," he said softly, trying to convey comfort. "Do you remember me?" Sophia nodded slowly, her voice still weak. "Yes, you were about to autopsy me." Lucas paused, remembering the moment he had almost lost the young woman. "Yes, but you're back. We're here to help. Can you tell us what happened before you were found?" She took a deep breath, her eyes darting away. "I was at a party. Everything seemed normal at first. But then I don't know. Everything got confusing. There were strange people, and I felt surrounded." Lucas could feel the tension building in her body as she spoke. He moved closer, leaning in to hear better. "Did you remember anything specific? Any details could help us understand what happened." Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, trying to remember. "There was this guy. He wasn't right. He was looking at me this way, and then things went dark. I can't remember anymore." Lucas felt a lump in his throat. He knew she was in danger, but there was something else there, a connection he couldn't explain. "Sophia, you mentioned someone who was looking at you. Can you describe what he looked like?" Sophia hesitated. "It was hard to see, but I remember a bracelet. It was black, with a symbol I don't recognize. It made me nervous." Lucas exchanged a meaningful look with Julio. The description might be the key they needed. But before they could ask any more questions, the monitor next to the bed began to beep. Sophia's heart was racing, and a nurse rushed to help. "What's going on?" Lucas asked, concerned. "Calm down. She's just anxious. Let's take care of her," the nurse said as she adjusted the equipment. Lucas felt his frustration growing. They were so close, but now Sophia needed care. He turned to Julio, determined. "We need to find out who this man is. The bracelet could be a clue. Let's see what else we can find." As they walked away from the room, Lucas glanced back, seeing Sophia relax a little. He was determined to help her recover, but he knew he needed to act quickly. The truth about what had happened to Sophia was hiding in the shadows, and he was determined to shine a light on them. After leaving the hospital, Lucas and Julio met at a nearby coffee shop, where they could discuss their next steps in a more relaxed environment. As they drank coffee, Julio reviewed his notes on the case. "We need to focus on this bracelet and the symbol Sophia mentioned," Julio said, looking at Lucas seriously. "It could be the key to identifying who was behind this." Lucas nodded, his thoughts still focused on the young woman who was struggling to recover. "I'm going to contact some friends from college who work in investigations and may have access to information about gangs in the area. Any ideas on what else we can do?" Julio took out his cell phone and made some notes. "We should also try to locate the party where it all happened. If we can find other witnesses, maybe someone might have seen something." As they talked, Lucas couldn't help but worry about Sophia. He knew that, in addition to her physical recovery, she also needed emotional support. The connection he felt for her was growing stronger, as if they were connected by something beyond the simple desire to solve the case. "Lucas, are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Julio asked, interrupting his thoughts. "What do you mean?" Lucas replied, a little lost. "I'm talking about how you seem to be quite involved. It's not just about the case for you, it's more personal. You care about her, don't you?" Lucas hesitated for a moment. It was true. There was something about Sophia that attracted him, a fragility that he wanted to protect. "Yes, I do. I can't explain it, but I feel like there's something deeper in this situation. I want to help in any way I can." Julio smiled, understanding Lucas's concern. "Then let's do it." We need to protect Sophia and find out who threatened her. We can't let that symbol and that bracelet disappear into thin air. With a new sense of urgency, Lucas and Julio decided to split up to look for information. Lucas made a call to a college friend who worked in public safety, while Julio headed to the party venue, determined to find any clue that could lead them to the person responsible for Sophia's situation. In the back of his mind, Lucas knew that each step took him closer to the truth, but it also involved him in a maze of emotions. The desire to protect Sophia and find out what had really happened consumed him, and he was ready to face any challenge that came his way. After they parted ways, Lucas headed home, where he sat in his office, surrounded by books and notes. The room was softly lit, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He couldn't get Sophia out of his head. What else could she be hiding? The symbol and the bracelet she had mentioned intrigued him, and he wondered if there was a secret, a deeper connection in his life. As he sifted through his notes, Lucas remembered something he had read about gangs using symbols as markers of belonging or territoriality. That could be a starting point. He needed to understand what that symbol meant, and if there were more people like Sophia involved. With determination, he decided to search online, researching local gangs and their symbols. After hours of research, an image caught his eye. It was a symbol that matched exactly what Sophia had described: a bracelet with a design of intertwined chains. The description said it was associated with a gang known for its violent behavior and drug dealing. Lucas's heart raced. He was starting to connect the dots, but there was still one crucial question. Why would Sophia be involved with them? He began to remember the story she had told him about her childhood, the loss of her parents, and how vulnerable that might have made her. Driven by this new understanding, Lucas decided he needed to track down Sophia's grandmother, Alice. If there was more information about her family, maybe he could find out what had led Sophia to this situation. When she arrived at Alice's house, she found her grandmother in a state of distress, with tears in her eyes. She was lost in her own thoughts and didn't seem to notice Lucas' presence. "Ms. Alice?" Lucas said, entering slowly. Alice turned around, her expression changing from confusion to relief when she saw Lucas. "Dr. Lucas, what are you doing here? Is Sophia okay?" "She's recovering, but we need to talk about her past. Can you tell me more about Sophia's family?" Lucas asked, trying to approach the subject delicately. Alice sighed deeply, her eyes full of sadness. Sophia was always a happy child, but when her parents passed away, everything changed. She became very lonely and distant from me. I tried to get closer, but she always seemed distant, as if she was dealing with a world she didn't understand. Lucas felt the weight of Alice's pain. "Do you know if she's gotten involved with anyone lately? Any new friends?" Alice hesitated, thinking, "I didn't know her friends well, but I heard her mention a group that invited her to parties. I didn't like that. I had always been afraid that she was putting herself in danger." Alice's words were like a warning echo in Lucas's mind. He knew that Sophia was moving away from her grandmother in search of something she couldn't find. The emptiness she felt could have led her to get involved with the wrong people. "We need to protect Sophia and find out the truth," Lucas said determinedly. "Thank you for sharing this with me, Ms. Alice. I will do my best to help your granddaughter." With this new information in hand, Lucas said goodbye to Alice and prepared to investigate further. Now he had a new focus: to find out not only what happened to Sophia, but also how to help her reconnect with her family and get away from any danger that threatened her. With renewed determination, Lucas decided that he needed to act quickly. The information he had gathered from Alice about Sophia and her past motivated him even more to seek the truth. He knew that every second counted, and the danger Sophia faced could be greater than he imagined. First, Lucas returned to the morgue to review the autopsy notes. As he reviewed the details once more, he noticed that in addition to the marks on Sophia's body, there was something unusual about her overall health. He decided that he needed to consult some of his fellow pathologists to get a second opinion on the findings. After a few phone calls, he was able to schedule a meeting with Dr. Renato, a friend and former college classmate who had always been an expert in toxicology. They met in Lucas's office, and he wasted no time in explaining the situation. "Lucas, are you telling me that the girl reacted during the autopsy?" Dr. Renato asked, arching an eyebrow. "Exactly. I was about to perform the autopsy, and she started writhing on the table. Also, I found strange marks on her body that make me think there's something else going on here," Lucas explained, showing her the notes. Dr. Renato frowned as he examined the papers. "Have you tested for substances? Sometimes drug use can cause unexpected reactions, even in people who appear to be dead." Lucas agreed, remembering that he hadn't considered this. "I haven't done it yet, but it seems like a good idea. If she was exposed to any substance, it could explain the reactions I saw." With this new direction, Lucas decided he needed to collect blood samples from Sophia for analysis. He contacted the hospital, asking for the test to be done as soon as possible. With that in mind, now he also had to go back to the party venue where Sophia had been. Julio had promised to investigate more about the group of people attending the party, but Lucas felt he needed to see the place for himself. Later that evening, he headed to the party address. What had once seemed like a happy event now seemed like a place full of shadows. He stood on the sidewalk, observing the building and remembering Alice's words about her fear regarding Sophia's friends. The place was full of young people laughing and having fun, but there was an air of tension. As he watched, he noticed a young woman with a bracelet similar to the one Sophia had mentioned. From what he knew, Lucas was sure that it was someone from the group. He decided to approach, feeling that each step took him closer to the truth. "Hi, do you mind if I ask you a question?" Lucas said, approaching the young woman. She looked at him surprised. "Sure. What do you want to know? Do you know a girl named Sophia?" Lucas asked, trying to sound casual. The young woman's expression changed instantly, and Lucas knew he had struck a nerve. She hesitated before answering, her eyes darting away. I don't know. I'm not her friend. I've just seen her around." Lucas felt he was on the right track, but he didn't want to push her too far. "Okay, if you hear anything, please let me know. It's important." He said goodbye, but the feeling that there was more to be discovered stayed with him. The night was just beginning, and he knew the investigation needed to continue. With his pulse racing, Lucas was determined to find out the truth about Sophia and what had brought her to this crossroads in her life. The next morning, Lucas felt more and more involved in Sophia's case. The previous night had been intense, and the restlessness in his heart was only growing. As he drank coffee, he reflected on the information he had gathered and the new leads he could follow. After Sophia's blood test had been performed, Lucas received a call from the hospital. The doctor in charge reported that there were traces of a substance known to be a strong sedative. This explained the reaction during the autopsy and could be an important clue as to what really happened to her. Feeling the urgency of the situation, Lucas decided it was time to gather everything he knew and act. He called Julio, and the two met at a cafe to discuss the next steps. "So, what did you find out?" Julio asked as Lucas sat down at the table. "Sophia was drugged with a strong sedative. That means someone put her in danger. We need to find out who was around at the party and who might have done it," Lucas explained, passing the information to Julio. Julio quickly wrote it down. "I've already got some leads on a group that frequented parties in this area. They have a bad reputation. I'll investigate this further. You should talk to Sophia. She might remember more details." Lucas nodded, anxiety growing inside him. "I'll go back to the hospital and talk to her. Now that we know she was drugged, maybe that will help her remember something else." With this new determination, Lucas headed to the hospital again. When he entered Sophia's room, he found her sitting on the bed, staring out the window. She seemed lost in thought, but when he saw him, a small smile appeared on her face. "Hi, Sophia. How are you feeling today?" Lucas asked, pulling up a chair to sit next to her. "Better, I think. The nurse said I'll be discharged soon," Sophia replied, her voice still soft. "That's good to hear. I wanted to talk to you about what happened at the party. What do you remember?" Lucas asked. "Try to be as gentle as possible." Sophia hesitated, as if fighting against her memories. I remember feeling really tired and, I don't know, it was all very confusing. There were a lot of strange faces. What about a guy who was watching you? Do you remember him?" Lucas continued, watching every expression on her face. Sophia's expression changed, and she began to remember. "Yes, he was wearing a dark t-shirt and had a bracelet on. I saw him looking at me, and it made me nervous. I tried to pull away, but I couldn't." Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. The description matched the young woman he'd met at the party. "Do you remember anything else about him?" "Any detail could be important. I just remember that he was laughing and..." Sophia trailed off, her hands shaking. After that, everything went black. Lucas leaned forward, his voice soft. "Sophia, you're very brave to share this. We have some clues that might help. If you remember anything else, please let me know." Sophia's expression softened a little. "Thank you, Dr. Lucas. I just want this to be over. I don't know how I've come to this point." He held her hand, sensing the fragility of her situation. "Together, we'll find out the truth and make sure you're safe. You're not alone in this." With that, Lucas said goodbye to Sophia, feeling like they were getting closer to solving the mystery. He knew the truth was closer than ever, and with Julio's help, they were determined to unmask whoever was behind what had happened. After saying goodbye to Sophia, Lucas felt a renewed determination. He knew that every piece of information he had learned from their conversations and the autopsy was bringing him closer to the truth. It was time to tie all the threads of the investigation together and take action. Lucas met with Julio again in his office, where they reviewed all the information. Julio had gotten some clues about the gang associated with the symbol Sophia had mentioned. They discovered that there was a specific place where the group met, a drug-dealing spot disguised as a bar. "We need to go there and see what we can find out," Julio suggested, his expression serious. "If Sophia was involved with this group, there may be other victims we need to protect." Lucas agreed. "Yes, but we need to be careful. If they find out we're investigating, they may try to silence her, and us too." With their strategy in mind, the two prepared for the mission. Wearing regular clothes, they headed to the bar. When they arrived, they noticed that the place was busy, full of young people. The loud music and the festive atmosphere contrasted with what Lucas knew was behind that facade. They split up to investigate the place. Lucas walked around the bar, observing the people, until he spotted a group that seemed to be more reserved in a corner. Among them, he recognized the young man who was wearing the bracelet. Disguising his intention, Lucas approached the group, paying attention to every word. The young man was talking animatedly, but Lucas caught phrases that made him feel a shiver down his spine. "We can't let anyone find out what happened to her. If they ask questions, just say she went out with someone," the boy said, laughing as if it were a joke. Lucas felt his adrenaline rising. He needed to act. With a burst of courage, he approached the group. "Hey guys, how are you? I heard this place is really cool." The eyes turned to him, but the young man with the bracelet immediately closed his eyes. "Who are you? You're not part of our group." Lucas smiled, trying to appear relaxed. "I'm just trying to have fun. I'm new in town. Can you show me what's good around here?" The young man hesitated, but the tension was broken by another member of the group who seemed friendlier. "Oh, relax. We'll show you how we party." Meanwhile, Julio, on the other side of the bar, watched from afar, waiting for the right moment to intervene. Lucas tried to make conversation, gathering information, but he felt he needed to be quick. The young man with the bracelet was getting more and more nervous. As soon as Lucas managed to move a little away, he saw Julio approaching. He made a discreet gesture, indicating that he was ready to act. The moment Julio joined Lucas, they both identified themselves as police officers, revealing their credentials. "Freeze!" Julio shouted, causing the group to scatter in panic. Amidst the confusion, Lucas focused on the young man with the bracelet, who tried to run away. Lucas quickly grabbed him by the arm, preventing him from leaving. "Do you know anything about Sophia? What happened to her?" Lucas asked, his voice firm. The young man hesitated, realizing that he was cornered. "I had nothing to do with this. It wasn't my fault." As the young man tried to get away, Julio was already calling for reinforcements. The situation quickly escalated. With the police now on the scene, the group of young people began to disperse, but Lucas and Julio were determined to catch the culprits. Finally, with the help of the police, Lucas and Julio managed to arrest the young man and question other people who were in the bar. Some of them began to talk, revealing what they knew about the gang and the events of the party. The truth was emerging, and Lucas felt that justice was about to be served. After an intense night, they managed to uncover a drug trafficking ring that had Sophia at its center, but now she was safe. The weight Lucas felt in his heart began to dissipate. He knew there was still much to do, but he felt that Sophia was one step closer to getting her life back. Hope was being reborn, and Lucas was determined to help her rebuild her identity and her future. Together, they would face what was to come, but now, the truth was within their reach, and a new beginning was announced.